Some men are born into violence, others are shaped by it. But Terry Blair, he was surrounded by it, cradled in a legacy soaked with blood. In any other family, murder might be an unthinkable tragedy. In his, it was tradition. Kansas City never saw him coming, but the signs were there. They always are. You just have to know where to look. I'm Charles, and tonight, we unravel the story of Terry Blair, a man raised by killers who became one himself. This is Evil Exposed: Killers, and this one is personal. Before Terry Blair ever took a life, murder was already part of his DNA. He was born into it, baptized in blood long before he ever drew his first, raised in Kansas City, Missouri, in a household where violence wasn't just tolerated, it was routine. Terry never really had a chance at a normal life. His family didn't just flirt with crime, they married it. His mother, Janice Blair, was convicted of killing his father. His brother, Walter Blair Jr., would later become a convicted murderer executed by the state. And his sister, Deborah Brown, would go on to become one half of a serial killing couple with Alton Coleman. Deborah alone left a trail of horror across multiple states. So when Terry Blair stepped into the spotlight, it was less of a surprise and more of a dark family reunion. But Terry didn't start off with mass murder. His first documented killing came in 1982, and it was intimate, personal. He strangled his girlfriend, Angela Monroe, who was also pregnant with his child. There wasn't some big chase, no twisted manifesto, just a cold, calculated act of rage. He left her body in an alley like garbage. When police caught up with him, Terry confessed. Not out of remorse, but with the kind of detachment you only see in people who've seen death too often to care. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for that killing. And for a time, it seemed like maybe the story ended there. Another violent man locked away, another grim statistic. But prison didn't break Terry. It reinforced him, gave him time to stew, to harden, to decide what kind of man he was going to be when he got out. He served 21 years before being paroled in 2003. In those 2 decades, the city had changed, but Terry hadn't. And now he had a new mission, one he believed was righteous, even divine. He believed certain women, specifically sex workers, were evil, dirty. His words, not ours. He saw himself not as a killer, but as a purifier. And that's when the real nightmare began. Within months of his release, the bodies started turning up. The first victim was 42-year-old Anna Ewing. Her body was found on July 16, 2004, dumped behind an abandoned building near downtown Kansas City. She'd been strangled, just like Angela Monroe over 20 years earlier. A few days later, 38-year-old Audrey Frazier was discovered. Same method, same type of victim, same disregard for life. To the city, it looked like a new serial killer was emerging. To Terry, it was just unfinished business. He didn't stalk his victims like some refined predator. He didn't lure them with charm. He found them, decided they were unworthy of life, and acted brutally. Quickly. Strangulation was his preferred method. It gave him control, dominance. It let him look into their eyes as the life drained out. These weren't crimes of passion. They were executions, judgments. The pattern wasn't subtle, but that didn't mean the police had an easy time pinning it on him. Sex workers often exist on the fringes of society, and for monsters like Terry Blair, that made them perfect targets. He believed no one would miss them, no one would care. And for a while, he was right. Terry was careful, but not invisible. Witnesses came forward, and police began building a case. They started connecting the dots, the locations, the victim types, the method. It was all too familiar. And eventually they got something solid, DNA. By September 2004, the city was on edge. Women were scared. Detectives were working overtime. And Terry? He was just getting started. But the noose was tightening. One mistake. That's all it ever takes. And Terry Blair was about to make one. Kansas City had seen killers before. But in the summer of 2004, something shifted. The bodies of women, most of them black, vulnerable, and working in street-level sex work, began appearing in alleys, vacant lots, and behind crumbling buildings. Their deaths weren't subtle. They'd all been strangled, stripped of dignity and discarded like trash. But these murders weren't just random acts of violence. There was a pattern, and it had a name: Terry Blair. He had only been out of prison for about a year. After serving 21 years for strangling his pregnant girlfriend in 1982, Parole had given him a second chance. But Blair never saw freedom as redemption. He saw it as an opportunity to continue what he'd started. Except this time, he wasn't just angry. He believed he was righteous. He started talking about cleaning up the streets. In his warped mind, these women weren't just targets. They were sinners, unworthy of life. Blair believed he was doing some kind of grim service, ridding the world of what he called filth. It wasn't justice. It wasn't morality. It was pure delusional cruelty hiding behind a fake sense of purpose. In July 2004, the city got its first taste of what Blair was truly capable of. The body of 42-year-old Anna Ewing was found dumped behind an abandoned home on East 39th Street. She had been strangled. Just days later, another woman, Audrey Frazier, turned up in a nearby alley. Same method, same brutal disposal. Police noticed the similarities. The press started whispering, "serial killer." But Blair wasn't done. By September, at least 5 more women had been murdered. Patricia Wilson, Darcy Green, Cassandra Casey Butler, Sandra Reed, and Libby Doss. All shared the same fate, strangled and dumped like waste. Each time, Blair got a little more confident, a little more reckless. But people were watching. Local residents had begun noticing the same man cruising the areas where the victims were last seen. Some of the women had been seen getting into the same blue Chevy truck. And police were starting to piece it together. They brought in extra patrols. They pulled surveillance footage. But what cracked the case wide open wasn't a camera, it was a phone. One of the victims, Libby Doss, had used her cell phone shortly before she died. Investigators traced the call log and found a familiar number, a phone linked to Terry Blair. When they pulled Blair in for questioning, they were hoping for a slip-up. What they got was a chilling confession wrapped in half-truths and deflections. Blair denied killing some of the women, but not all. He gave them just enough to keep them listening, but not enough to close the book. He said things like, "They needed to go, and I did what I had to do." His voice was calm, matter of fact. There was no sadness, no guilt. Just the cold delivery of a man who thought he was right. The public didn't know the details yet, but rumors were everywhere. A killer was out there, targeting women with a specific pattern. Kansas City was tense. For women on the streets, especially sex workers, the fear was constant. Terry Blair had become the monster they warned each other about. When police searched Blair's home, they found more than just circumstantial evidence: hair, fibers, and traces of blood. Pieces of his victims that tied him to multiple crime scenes. But what stood out most was how ordinary it all seemed. No shrines, no trophies, no hidden lairs. Just a man living in plain sight, blending into the world around him like a shadow no one noticed until it was too late. Eventually, DNA did what Terry Blair couldn't stop, connected him to the murders of at least 7 women. But many believe the number is higher, much higher. He never admitted to all of it, and police never found all the answers. What they did find was a killer, molded by violence, fueled by hate, and convinced he was on some divine mission. A man born into blood who had finally embraced it fully, and now the trial was coming. But Terry Blair wasn't done talking yet. In court, he would show the world exactly how deep his darkness went. During the trial, Blair's defense tried to argue for mental illness. They claimed a history of trauma and abuse had warped his judgment. But the jury didn't buy it. Not when faced with his calm, calculated movements. Not when they heard the audio recordings of him talking about the victims as if they were beneath him. Not when they looked into the eyes of the man who showed zero remorse for snuffing out the lives of at least 7 women. In March of 2008, the verdict came down. Guilty on multiple counts of first-degree murder. The sentence? Life in prison with no possibility of parole. Blair didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He simply nodded, like he'd been expecting it all along, like he knew he was never supposed to be free. But here's what makes the story of Terry Blair even more horrifying. It doesn't end with him. His family is a twisted legacy of death. His mother murdered his father. His brother, Walter Blair Jr., became a hired killer and was executed by lethal injection. His sister, Deborah Brown, went on a multi-state killing spree with her partner, Alton Coleman, targeting young girls and elderly women in one of the most disturbing serial murder cases in U.S. history. Terry didn't break the cycle. He continued it. He was the next link in a chain of murder that stretched across decades. The women he killed weren't protected. Society barely noticed them until it was too late. And Terry, he counted on that. He exploited the world's indifference to people living on the margins. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't hide in the shadows. Terry Blair walked among us, quiet, patient, and ready to strike, just like the monsters who raised him.